Okay, so welcome back to another video where I'm going to ramble about a certain topic that floats around in the Resident Evil kind of fan base, I guess. And it always comes up every time, usually more so when a game gets announced or releases. And it's still a present conversation between then. And that is the whole, is Resident Evil really a zombie game? Should it be a zombie game again? Like, should it go back to normal zombies? It's an interesting kind of opinion to have, and I'm on the fence about it personally, but I believe it probably shouldn't, and I'll explain why over the video. But yeah, more of a rambly type video. I think I've done a couple of these before, so I'm just going to kind of throw my thoughts out there about the whole situation. So first and foremost, I think the zombie kind of feel of the original games was very much a thing of its time, personally. If you've been alive for the same amount of time as I have, you'll know that, from, the 80s and 90s, all the way until, I want to say, like, the mid-2010s, zombies were a big thing. Like, there were a lot of movies, a lot of games being made purely around zombies and different takes on zombies. You've got the old-school George Romero films, you've got more modern films like Zombieland. Even games, like there were massive game series that kind of made zombie games. Dead Island is a game series people love. The zombie game, Dead Rising. Even the Call of Duty series adopted zombies, and that was massive. Like, that was huge. And I feel like all the way from, again, like the late 80s, early 90s, yeah, the zombie genre was a big thing, and it did stick around for a long time. I think Resident Evil obviously saw that and went, okay, how do we make a game that appeals to people and is scary and is different and is new? And I feel like they put the zombies in for that reason. It's appealing because there is a lot of zombie media going around at this time, and it wasn't slowing down anytime soon. That being said, though, some things to keep in mind with Resident Evil specifically, hence the topic being Resident Evil being a zombie game. It isn't just a zombie game. Well, yes, there's zombies present, especially in the first 3 and a couple extras, but zombies aren't the only real threat, and honestly, they're not the biggest threat in the game at all. If you've played Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, all the way until, now, like, the zombies are there, they are a threat. Of course they're a threat, like, they're an enemy that's going to kill you, but they're not the biggest threat there. Resident Evil 1, for example, you got the zombies, okay, the normal zombies. And then you've got the big spiders and the dogs that are zombies, but they are faster zombies, basically. Yeah, you've got the spiders, you've got the hunters, the tyrant. There's so many other things going on that aren't just the zombies, that are a lot more dangerous than the zombies, that people kind of forget they're there, because there's so many. Like, the zombies are the more common enemy in any of the games, but there's a lot more dangerous things in these games than just the normal shambling zombies, Jump again to Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 has one of the most iconic enemies in Resident Evil in it. The Lickers. When I think of Resident Evil 2, do I think about zombies walking around the corridor at me? Absolutely not. Do I think about the cutscene where the Licker is on the roof? Absolutely. Like, that's the impact that's been kind of left from Resident Evil 2. Yes, there is moments in Resident Evil 2 where zombies, are there, and it is a present thing, and people remember it, like the window, the infamous window, for example, where all the arms come through at once. That's a zombie moment. But, all the way back to the Licker cutscene in Resident Evil 2, going back to Resident Evil 1, you got the Hunter cutscene where you're following it, chasing you through the house. That's a lot more threatening than any zombie I'll ever see, honestly. Jump forward to Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. Like, yes, the zombies are still there, okay, the zombies are still present, but the main thing about Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, that's the whole point of the game, and he is dangerous. He is not a zombie, I tell you that much. He is smart, he is ruthless, and he will literally not stop for anything. Zombies, a couple shots, they're down. Nemesis, gonna take a little bit more than that to deal with this guy, and I think, from the very beginning, it was never really supposed to be just a zombie game, I don't think. I don't think that was ever the intention for the game series. I could be wrong, but all these other ideas, all these other designs are so much more fresh, at the time anyway, than just a normal zombie chasing you around. Now here's where my opinion slightly changes towards zombies being better for the series. Ganados, the enemies in Resident Evil 5, and then the Resident Evil 6 enemies, they're all the same. They're all kind of the same thing. And I think this is an issue mainly with where the games went, rather than the decision about the enemies themselves. Resident Evil 4 was a bit of an exception, it was slightly different, but Resident Evil 5 and 6, enemy-wise, did feel very, very similar. First of Resident Evil 4, you know, the villagers and the Ganados of Resident Evil 4, while they were not zombies, they felt kinda like zombies. They were a bit more smart though, they were a bit more, you know, they would work together, they would put up ladders to try and get to you, they would throw things at you, but they would kind of still use melee weapons and get really close to you, so they were still dealt with in the same way. Except a few exceptions from, you know, later in the game when you fight the island type Ganados and stuff like that. It is different there. But at the very beginning of the game and the first part of the game, that's fine. Like, that's acceptable. But with Resident Evil 5 and 6, they change it a bit too much, and they go kind of over the top with the mutations in those games, I would say. I think that's kind of an issue for me with those games. A lot of the time in Resident Evil 5 and 6, you are fighting an enemy where you shoot its arm off or its head off, and there is an obvious glowing yellow spot or a black spot you have to hit to kill it. And it gets kind of old, you know. I'm not saying Resident Evil 5 and 6 are bad because of that. I'm just saying I've noticed it while playing that they're very the same. Very, very similar. However, I will give props to Resident Evil 6 for the very first part of Leon's campaign, because you are actually fighting zombies again. Like, I think people seem to forget that that was a thing, you know. Resident Evil 6 did have zombies in it very briefly, but they were normal zombies, you know, for a good portion of Leon's campaign. I think the first 3 missions, maybe. It's just zombies, dude, and it's a pretty good time. And then it veers into that whole over-the-top action that Resident Evil 6 is, but the very first part of Leon's campaign, very cool, very good, and I really quite liked it. Jumping right back to Resident Evil 7, when they kind of rebooted the series, in a sense, the molded were kind of zombies, let's be honest. They acted the same, they weren't very smart, kind of like zombies as well. Yes, I think they were a lot more spongy, and there was different variants of them, with the fat molded and the 4-legged ones. But, you know, for the most part, they were very zombie type enemies. Now, anyone who knows my channel and has heard me talk about 7 and Village knows that I always prefer 7 over Village. I prefer the old school style of the games, you know, the close compact areas, the puzzles, the limited inventory, the key items being manageable, and stuff like that. I prefer that over the attach case, unlimited space for key items type system that's present in, you know, Resident Evil 4 and 8. I just prefer the old school way of playing the game. That's why I really hold 7 and 2 in such high regard, because they're so well done with that stuff. But that begs the question, you know, is Resident Evil really a zombie game? I do think it's a matter of perspective, honestly. The game as being a big storyline does prove that it did start with zombies, but the series needed to evolve, okay? I think that's the thing. Especially with the zombie games being phased out over time. Like, if you've seen any recent releases now, you know, there's not many zombie games being released nowadays. I think Dying Light 2, I think, for the most part, was kind of the proof that zombie games do still sell, but there's not many of them anymore, really. Not often do you see a big zombie game being made lately. Do I think Resident Evil should return to having actual zombies in its game? I have no idea how I feel about that. I honestly would say I'd welcome it. At the same time, I wouldn't mind if they didn't. Me personally, with Resident Evil Village and the whole, you know, Lycans, werewolves type thing, I was on the fence with that when I first saw the game get announced. I was very concerned, you know, with, oh boy, now we're already going somewhere stupid with having werewolves and Lycans into the game. But it worked really well. It did work well. It matched the theme of the game. I'm still not entirely sure why we went down the route of werewolves and vampires, even though they're not technically werewolves or they're not technically vampires because of the background story of the game. Whatever, it is still very apparent that they're based around vampires and werewolves. Even Heisenberg is based off of Frankenstein. So they really did take a lot of those old school tropes in Resident Evil Village and add them to the game. Again, that's not a complaint from Village. I think Village is a really good game, but it was a weird way to go. Especially because the game is still set in modern times, and yet there's this village out of nowhere that's just covered in werewolves and vampires and Frankensteins and stuff like that. It's very strange, but it worked. It did work, and I think that kind of does prove that they can go anywhere with this series. You know, as long as it makes sense to the game, it's fine. But would I like zombies to come back? I think it would be cool to have the old school zombies back. But at the same time, you know, the series has to evolve eventually. I think that's what we saw from 1 to 3, and then 4 through 6, and now 7 and 8. You know, they have changed over time. I think it's a good thing, honestly. I really, really do. But that's basically it for me. I don't really have an opinion on whether I think they should come back or not. Do I think Resident Evil was a zombie game to begin with? Probably not. I think it was more zombies were present because it was popular, and then all these other enemies were involved as well. But let me know what you think. Leave your thoughts down below in the description. I would love to see them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.